Hi, first grade. We're going to read a little more. Let me adjust my camera here. We're going to read a little bit more of our book, Henry Huggins. When we left off, Henry had gotten his dog, Ribsy, home, and his parents were going to let him keep the dog. And so now we're on to chapter 2, Gallons of Guppies. Every afternoon after school, Ribsy waited for Henry under a fir tree in the corner of the schoolyard. 4 days a week they ran home the shortest way, past the park, up the hill, and through the vacant lot. On Fridays, however, they walked home the long way, round past the Rose City drugstore, the supermarket, the Ideal barber shop, and the Lucky Dog pet shop. At the pet store they stopped while Henry bought 2 pounds of horse meat from Mr. Pennycuff. Henry liked to go to the pet store. The windows were full of puppies and kittens, and just before Easter, rabbits and baby chicks and ducks. Inside there was usually a parrot or a monkey, and once there had been a deodorized skunk. Henry thought it would be fun to have a skunk following him around, but when he found it cost $40, he gave up the idea. But best of all, Henry liked the fish. One side of the store was covered with rows of little tanks. Each aquarium contained green plants that grew underwater, snails, and a different kind of tropical fish. Henry always stopped to look at each tank. He liked the dollar-sized black and silver striped angelfish and the inch-long orange moonfish with their velvety fins and tails. He thought the tiny catfish were fun to watch because they stayed on the bottom of the tank and rolled their eyes and used their whisker-like barbels to feel around in the sand for food. Mr. Pennycuff explained that the fish came from all over the world, but most of them came from jungle rivers where the water was warm. That's why they were called tropical fish. Let's see if I can show you my picture. One Friday, when Henry went to the pet store, he saw a sign that read, "Special offer, 1 pair of guppies, fish bowl, 1 snail, aquatic plant, package of fish food, all for 79 cents. "Jeepers," said Henry, "all that for 79 cents? He looked at the fish in the bowls. Each bowl held 1 plain silvery gray fish, almost 2 inches long, and 1 smaller fish with all the colors of the rainbow. That really is a bargain." "It certainly is," agreed Mr. Pennycuff. "Shall I wrap up a pair for you?" Henry felt around in his pocket. The silver dollar his grandfather had given him was still there. He watched the little rainbow fish chase the silvery fish and decided he had to have a pair of guppies. After all, it was his very own money he was spending. He would keep them on the dresser in his room. They would just stay in his room and swim quietly around in their bowl. He didn't see how his mother could object to 2 quiet little fish that didn't bark or track in mud or anything. "I'll take a pair," Henry told Mr. Pennycuff, and watched him fasten waxed paper around the top of the bowl with a rubber band and put it into a bag. "Now be sure to put the bowl near a heater in cold weather, so the fish won't get chilled and catch ick." "Ick?" said Henry. "Yes, ick. When the fish get chilled, they catch ick and are covered with tiny white spots." "Gosh," said Henry, maybe there was more to keeping guppies than he thought. "Oh, don't worry," said Mr. Pennycuff. "They can stand water down to 60 degrees. If it were that cold in the house, you'd have the heat on." Well, that sounded easy. "How often do I change the water?" asked Henry. "You shouldn't have to change the water. The snails help keep it clean. Just give the fish a tiny pinch of food once a day. It's only when the fish don't eat all their food or when you have too many fish in a bowl that the water gets dirty." Mr. Pennycuff gave Henry his change. "I didn't know that," said Henry. "I'm glad you told me. Here, Ribsy." He handed Ribsy his package of horse meat. The dog took it in his mouth and they left the pet store. "You'll have to carry your meat all the way home today, and don't you stop and try to eat it before we get home either. It has to last you a few days." Ribs wagged his tail and trotted on ahead of Henry with his meat. Henry tried to walk without jiggling the package. He didn't want to slosh the guppies any more than he had to. When Ribsy was half a block ahead of Henry, he dropped his package and looked back at Henry. Then he began to tear the paper off the meat. Well, you knew that was going to happen, right? Of course he did. "Hey, cut that out," yelled Henry. He started to run, but the water in his fishbowl sloshed and he had to stop. Just to be safe, Ribsy picked up his meat, trotted farther down the sidewalk, and finished tearing off the paper. "Stop that, you old dog." Again, Henry tried to run. This time he held the bowl straight out in front of him, but the water still sloshed. Ribs gobbled part of the meat and then trotted ahead with the rest of it in his mouth. Just as Henry was almost close enough to reach for the meat, Ribsy put on a burst of speed. Well, can you kind of see it? Ribsy, you come here. The dog ignored Henry. Oh, I'll get you for this. Henry was really angry now. He set his package of guppies on the sidewalk and ran after his dog. This time, Henry caught up with him. Henry grabbed one end of the meat and pulled. Ribsy, growling deep in his throat, hung onto the other end and pulled. The dog had a better grip on the meat because he could sink his teeth in it. Henry found the raw meat was cold and slippery. You let go of that meat. Ribsy growled more fiercely. He sounded as if he meant it, and the harder Henry pulled, the louder Ribsy growled. I don't think this is going to end well for Ribsy. I don't think it's going to end well for Henry, and I really don't think it's going to end well for the fish. We'll have to find out tomorrow.